This is not nostalgia. This is a record. You are here because memory lies. Records do not. Silence did not arrive suddenly. It was administered. We place your memory back onto the autopsy table once again. Search the corners of your mind for an afternoon, a bathroom cabinet, a kitchen drawer, a small white tablet, designed to be swallowed with a single, effortless sip of water. In 1978, no one called it sedation. No one called it control. It was simply called help. This is our fourth anesthesia. By the late 1970s, the American middle class was carrying a level of fatigue that had reached its structural limit. The economic shocks of the early decade, the oil crisis and the market collapses that followed, had not been resolved. They had merely faded into background radiation. Jobs still existed. Paychecks still arrived, but their weight diminished over time. Inflation no longer screamed, it lingered, like a low-grade fever that never fully broke, eroding the cartilage of the household budget. Debt did not explode, it expanded silently. Trust in institutions did not collapse, it withdrew. In such an environment, emotional volatility became inefficient. Anger disrupted schedules. Anxiety interfered with routine. Exhaustion threatened performance. The system required stillness. Positions had to be held. Functions had to be performed without friction. Valium answered this requirement, not by changing circumstances, but by recalibrating perception. Recall the mothers of that era. For them, quiet was framed as responsibility. A calm home was a successful home. A composed mother was a functional one. The pill, long known in popular culture as a mother's little helper, became the chemical buttress that prevented the nuclear family from fracturing under accumulated pressure. The tablet did not promise happiness, it promised quiet. When that white pill dissolved into the bloodstream, the sharp edges of the world dulled. Late nights at the office, stacks of unpaid bills, the constant demands of children. None of it registered as acute pain anymore. Arguments lost intensity. Fear lost sharpness. Grief no longer demanded immediate attention. Nothing was fixed, but nothing insisted. The nervous system entered a holding pattern. This was not collapse, it was suspension. The ticking of the living room clock grew unnaturally loud in that medicated calm. A silence purchased. A silence prescribed. We now take the scalpel and move through the internal layers of this chemical piece. Diazepam, known by its trade name, Valium. This molecule does not erase fear. It alters the body's response to it. By enhancing the action of GABA in the brain, it slows neural firing. Signals that once demanded action dissolve into tolerance. Urgency loses traction. This mechanism mattered. Medical records from the period do not describe crisis. They describe volume. Prescriptions increase steadily, not in spikes, not in emergencies, in smooth, predictable curves. The notes are brief, routine, unremarkable. Anxiety, insomnia, difficulty coping. There are no follow-up questions recorded, no inquiry into origin, no exploration of cause. Only continuation. Refills appear on schedule, dosages adjust upward, then stabilize. The body adapts. This is not treatment, it is calibration. The goal was not resolution, it was consistency. In kitchens, pills were taken without ceremony. No discussion, no announcement, a glass of water, a swallow, a pause. Then movement resumed, laundry folded, children fed, voices moderated. Nothing dramatic occurred. That was the point. By 1978, Valium had reached unprecedented national scale. Women were not prescribed it because they were clinically ill. They were prescribed it because the system required them to remain operational. Medical language called it treatment. Social reality called it maintenance. Doctors offered reassurance instead of inquiry. You're just under a lot of stress. This will help you cope. In this context, cope meant continue. A chemically calm population is predictable. A predictable population is manageable. The silencing of distress allowed deeper extraction without resistance. The cost did not disappear, it migrated. Muscles relaxed, joints stiffened over years, sleep deepened, mornings dulled, memory softened at the edges, erasing parts of the personal record. Children noticed first. They lacked language but not perception. Their mother was present but distant. Care continued, meals cooked, clothes washed, but resonance was gone. This absence was too subtle to be named neglect. It registered only as emotional vacancy. The child learned that strong feelings should not surface, that distress belonged in silence, that silence equaled stability. During the same period, the father's body followed a different path. He was less likely to receive Valium. His sedation arrived through alcohol, exhaustion, and routine. Two bodies adapting to the same pressure. One chemically muted emotion, the other converted stress into physical degradation. Both outcomes served the system. Neither produced resistance. The drug did not repair damage. It redistributed sensation. What appeared as peace was managed silence. The system did not require joy. It required compliance. Valium delivered it. The chemical silence did not last forever. By the early 1980s, residues surfaced. Dependency, cognitive dulling, emotional detachment. But the primary transfer had already occurred. Children raised in these environments inherited regulation patterns they did not choose. They learned to self-soothe rather than confront, to internalize rather than express, to interpret flattened emotion as maturity. This was not a failure of parenting. It was adaptation under constraint. Parents were not trying to erase themselves. They were trying to remain. Valium did not make them weak. It made them usable. Usable to employers, usable to families, usable to a system that could not afford visible fracture. Decades later, what remains is not the pill. It is the architecture it enabled. Conflict avoidance, emotional minimization, chemical solutions to structural problems. The silence passed forward, not as a prescription, as a habit. This is the record of how stability was chemically purchased, a transaction executed through compliance, not intent. The middle class did not disappear. It adapted. It paid in sensation, in memory, in emotional depth. The record does not accuse. It documents. This was not healing. It was management. This was not peace. It was chemical silence. This is a record. The record remains. The audit is closed. You remain.